That moment when you look at your bank account and realize that, once again, you reached zero before the end of the month. The silence that follows that moment is heavy, is it not? If you just subscribed, welcome to Minimalist Charm. Activate the bell and leave your like. This space was created for people who seek a life with more elegance and less financial anxiety. My grandmother Akiko survived the devastation of post-war Japan with just one cotton kimono and 3 porcelain bowls. Years later, when she was already living in abundance in the United States, she continued to save every gift wrapper, every fallen elastic band, every piece of aluminum foil. "What a waste," she would whisper. Unlike her, I grew up between two worlds, the American one that celebrates abundance and the Japanese one that reveres emptiness, and I discovered, in the most painful way, that having everything means nothing when you do not have financial freedom. In 2008, while serving green tea to my clients in an apartment overlooking Central Park, I never imagined that in a matter of months I would lose everything: the apartment, the investments, the successful identity I had, meticulously built. The crisis left me with just 2 suitcases and a debt that seemed impossible to repay. Today, after rebuilding my life with less, but with much more intention, I realize how certain financial habits kept me trapped in a cycle of poverty that, although it did not seem so from the outside, was consuming me from within. There is a crucial difference between being financially poor, which is a temporary circumstance, and carrying a poverty mentality, which is a persistent condition. The first can be changed with strategy. The second requires a complete inner transformation. 1. The illusion of control without planning. Last Monday, I met a client who arrived in a luxury car, wearing a watch that cost more than many rents. But her closet was filled with clothes with tags still on, many purchased years ago, while she was still paying her credit card with astronomical interest. "Naomi, I do not know where my money goes," she confessed, as I served bancha tea in ceramic bowls. Simple, but perfectly proportional. There is a form of poverty that is not immediately visible, the poverty of awareness. You cannot control what you do not measure. Without a system to record your earnings and expenses, whether a spreadsheet, an app, or even a small hardcover notebook where you write with a black ink pen, you are navigating in the dark. During my years in Japan, I learned about the traditional domestic accounting method. Every Friday, after bathing, I sit with my tea, my brown leather notebook, and my favorite pen. This ritual is not just functional, it is an act of respect for the money that worked for me. A salary of $5,000 seems abundant until you subtract taxes, transportation, food, and fixed bills. Suddenly, that abundance transforms into scarcity. Clarity is the first step to freedom. I remember a visit I made to a temple in Kyoto, where the gardens are meticulously planned to appear natural. The monk gardener explained to me that he spent hours counting each leaf and stone. "What seems simple," he said with a serene smile, "requires the greatest care in details. Your finances are no different. Those who appear financially calm are rarely improvising. They have systems invisible to external eyes. Like the Zen gardener, they know each leaf of expense and each stone of income. Start today. A simple notebook where you write down every cent that comes in and goes out is enough. Do not seek perfection. Seek awareness. The first month will be revealing, perhaps even shocking. But as the Zen masters say, the shock of awakening is proportional to the depth of sleep. 2. The inverted order of priorities. In Boston, there is a small Japanese restaurant where the chef serves only 8 people per night. Before each meal, he chooses the best fish available that day, for himself. Only after securing the best ingredient for his art does he select what he will serve to customers. Most people do exactly the opposite with their money. They pay all bills, then spend on small pleasures, and finally, if anything is left, consider investing. This inversion is fatal. When my son Kenji received his first salary, I took him to the bank. Before paying any bill, I explained as we walked along the sidewalk covered with maple leaves, set aside 20% for your future self. This money is not extra. It is the most important part of your salary. I remember how his eyes showed confusion. But what if I need that money now? That is exactly why it should be the first to leave, I replied. Because there will always be an immediate need trying to devour your future. If you wait until the end of the month to invest, you will discover that it is never the right time. Money has the peculiar ability to evaporate when it has no designated purpose. Like those beautiful French macarons that you buy thinking you will savor slowly, but that disappear in minutes. It is a matter of discipline, but also of self-esteem. Paying yourself first is an act of self-affirmation. You declare to yourself that your future matters as much as your present. It is like preserving that special porcelain for daily use, instead of saving it only for special occasions. That rarely come. I use the three-pot system: one for needs, one for growth, and one for generosity. Before any other expense, I distribute my income into these three containers. Literally, I have 3 small ceramic urns in my office. The needs are obvious. Growth is anything that increases my value or assets. Generosity is what connects me with something greater than myself. Start with modest percentages: 5% for growth and 2% for generosity. But start. Like the bamboo shoot that grows imperceptibly for years before erupting from the soil, this silent habit will grow exponentially over time. 3. The silent trap of credit. Last week, I received a call from an architect friend. She had just completed a magnificent project but was in financial panic. During 6 months of intense work, she compensated for the stress by buying designer clothes and dining at fancy restaurants. After all, she needed to look successful for her clients. Now, with one project completed and several months until the next payment, her credit card bill was larger than her own fee. Credit, when poorly used, is like a beautiful floral arrangement made with poisonous flowers, aesthetically pleasing, but lethal to the touch. The credit card is not extra money. It is future money being consumed in the present, often with absurd interest rates. My grandfather Takeshi used to say, "Whoever borrows from the future always pays with interest of stress." A single bill not paid in full can turn into years of financial servitude. Credit card interest rates are like those invasive plants in the garden. If you do not remove them by the root immediately, they will dominate the entire space in a matter of weeks. When I lived in Tokyo, I learned about the belief that objects gain a soul after a certain time of use. Compound interest rates seem to have this same mystical property. They start inanimate, but gain a life of their own, multiplying while you sleep. I remember a client who over 5 years paid more than $35,000 in interest on an original debt of $8,000. I could have taken a course in Europe, bought a car, or made a down payment on an apartment, she said, contemplating the void that money left. If you already have card debts, make them your absolute priority, even before investing. It is mathematically impossible to build wealth while paying 15, 20, or 25% annual interest. As my grandfather said when teaching me to play chess, before advancing the pieces, eliminate the threats. Reduce to just one card with a low limit. Use it only for essential scheduled purchases that you already have money to pay for. Even better, use a debit card, which connects you to the immediate reality of your money, not the illusory possibilities of credit. 4. The silent expansion of the standard of living. When I lived in Kyoto, I frequently visited a temple famous for its stone garden. 15 stones arranged in such a way that, from any angle, one always remains hidden. The Zen monks created it to teach us about the impossibility of complete perception. Our relationship with money works in a similar way. We rarely notice how our standard of living silently expands, consuming each salary increase before we can even notice it. I know executives who earn 10 times more than they earned 5 years ago, but remain equally financially stressed. With each promotion, they exchange their apartment for a larger one, their car for a more luxurious one, their vacations for more exclusive destinations. True luxury, as I learned from my grandmother Akiko, is not in spending more, but in needing less. She served the finest tea in simple bowls that had survived 3 generations. Beauty, she would say as the steam rose in silent spirals, is in the space between things, not in the things themselves. Keep your lifestyle always 2 or 3 steps below your purchasing power. Wear quality clothes that last years, not seasons. Visit places for the experience, not the status. Appreciate what you already have before yearning for what you do not possess. This practice is what the Japanese call the miniature garden that, despite the limited space, creates a sense of amplitude through careful positioning of elements. Your lifestyle can be a financial miniature garden, contained but deeply satisfying. I have had the same wardrobe for 4 years, 33 pieces that combine with each other, all in neutral colors, all of superior quality. When a piece wears out, I replace it with something similar. This small act of resistance to ephemeral fashion saves me not only money, but also the mental energy of deciding what to wear each day. My walnut dining table is 15 years old. It is a well-made piece that ages with dignity, gaining character with each mark or scratch. I paid more for it than I would have paid for a common table, but divide the cost by 15 years, and you will see how quality is, paradoxically, more economical than mediocrity. This principle applies to almost everything, from pans to relationships. What is worth having with quality. 5. The obsession with saving at the expense of growth. During my years volunteering in the regions affected by the Isai tsunami of 2011 in Japan, I met an elderly lady who had lost everything except a small wooden box with family photos. As we helped clean the rubble of what had been her home for 50 years, she told me something I never forgot. Naomi, you cannot save your way to wealth. It is like trying to fill a bucket by making fewer holes instead of adding more water. Many of us, especially after facing financial difficulties, become experts in tightening belts, cutting expenses, finding deals. This scarcity mentality has its value, but it has a clear limit. In Brazil, where I lived briefly while researching, for a lecture at a museum, I saw families who, despite all possible financial discipline, simply could not save beyond a certain point. The basic cost of living consumed almost the entire budget. At some point, you need to shift the focus from saving to earning more. This may mean investing in education, starting a business, developing skills that increase your market value, or creating passive income sources. My own financial transformation began not when I learned to spend less, but when I learned to be worth more. After returning from Japan to the United States, I took a design course that cost the equivalent of 3 months of my rent. It was a risk, but it doubled my market value in less than a year. As my grandmother used to say, knowledge is the only thing that no one can take from you, not even a tsunami. Observe your life and ask yourself, am I dedicating more energy to containing expenses or to expanding revenues? Both are important, but only one has unlimited potential. When I studied Japanese calligraphy, my master always said, the beginner focuses on the precision of the stroke. The master focuses on the energy of the movement. Similarly, the beginner in finance focuses on the precision of expenses. The master on the energy of earnings. Identify what you do exceptionally well. Where do your skills meet the needs of the world? In that intersection lies your potential for financial growth. As the Japanese proverb says, the bamboo that bends is stronger than the oak that resists. Adapt, be flexible, find new paths for your energy to flow. 6. The trap of cumulative hobbies. I remember a client, a successful doctor, who came to my studio asking for help organizing his apartment. When I entered, I found not one, but 3 entire rooms dedicated to cycling equipment. Rare bicycles, titanium parts, technical clothes, still with tags. It is just a hobby, he explained, as I silently observed the equivalent of a luxury car spread out in the form of bicycles. Hobbies are like those beautiful floral arrangements. They need space to breathe and be appreciated. When we accumulate several, they compete for our attention and resources, creating more stress than pleasure. The problem is not in having passions. They give flavor to life. The problem is in accumulating hobbies that require continuous investment, without consideration of the cumulative financial impact. An off-road Jeep may seem like a dream come true, but the $3,000 monthly in maintenance, insurance, and fuel represent $36,000 a year. enough for a significant down payment on a property or a substantial investment. Choose one or two hobbies that truly enrich your life and practice them with depth, not breadth. Take the case of a fashion editor I met, always financially stressed despite her excellent salary. She practiced horseback riding on weekends, with horse rental and equipment, collected rare wines, but barely had time to taste them, maintained an annual opera subscription, which she attended exhausted, and had recently started ceramic classes, for which she acquired a professional kiln. How much pleasure do you really extract from each of these activities? I asked as we organized her overflowing closet. She paused, reflecting. Actually, none of them completely. I am always too tired to fully enjoy them. I suggested she choose just one, the one that most resonated with her soul. 6 months later, she had sold almost all the equestrian and ceramic equipment, kept only a small selection of truly meaningful wines, and dedicated herself genuinely to opera. Not just watching, but studying, appreciating, integrating that art into her life. I have never felt so rich with so much less, she confessed to me. The Japanese have a concept called life purpose, the intersection between what you love, what you are good at, what the world needs, and what can be remunerated. Your hobbies do not need to meet all these criteria, but they should reflect what truly resonates with your inner being. Cultivate seriously what you genuinely love, and abandon without guilt what merely accumulates in your life. As my tea ceremony teacher used to say, it is better to know deeply a single tea leaf than superficially the entire plantation. 7. Indefinitely postponed investment. In my apartment, I have a small stone that my grandfather Takeshi gave me when I was just 7 years old. He found it near the river where he meditated daily. This stone, he said as he placed the cold, smooth object in my small hands, was shaped by decades of running water, a little each day, without hurry, without pause. Investment works exactly this way. It may seem insignificant to invest $100 today, but these small, constant, and patient flows eventually sculpt mountains of financial security. Many postpone investment thinking they need significant amounts to start, or that they need to completely master the financial market. It is like postponing learning to swim until you know how to swim perfectly. Start small, but start now. As my grandmother Akiko taught me while we carefully folded the traditional wrapping cloth to wrap gifts, the important thing is not the perfection of the first fold, but starting with clear intention. One of the biggest mistakes I see, especially among young professionals, is thinking that knowledge about investments must precede action. They expect to read all the books, understand all the strategies, analyze all the markets. Meanwhile, years of potential growth are lost. In New York, I met a 23-year-old editorial assistant who invested $50 a month, all she could save from her modest salary, while friends with higher salaries postponed investments because they did not feel ready, she simply started. 10 years later, when we met again, she had accumulated more than many of them, not because she understood more about finance, but because time worked in her favor. Minimalists understand the value of time. They know that a clean closet today means less mess to deal with tomorrow. The same principle applies to money. Even small amounts invested consistently have the power to transform your financial reality. It is not about how much you start with, but about when you start. As we learn in the practice of floral arrangement, the perfect arrangement is not created at once, but through small, consistent adjustments over time. 8. Fear disguised as prudence. An observation I made over the years consulting people on financial minimalism. Often, what seems like prudence is just disguised fear. I will keep this in case I need it one day. I cannot invest now. What if the market falls? I cannot open my business. What if I fail? We keep objects for fear of scarcity. We avoid investments for fear of loss. We postpone dreams for fear of failure. But as my grandfather used to say, fear is a useful advisor, but a terrible master. When I worked as a professional photographer, I met a young model who meticulously saved every penny. For security, she would say. Years later, I discovered that she never traveled, never invested in her education, never risked opening her own business. This false prudence is a form of mental poverty, the limiting belief that the world is essentially a place of scarcity, not abundance. True financial prudence is not accumulating out of fear, but investing with wisdom. It is cultivating the courage to use resources, money, time, energy, in opportunities that really matter. Think of how the Japanese gardener drastically prunes the tree so that it grows stronger and more beautiful. Sometimes, real prudence requires apparent risk, apparent loss, to enable genuine growth. 9. The dysfunctional emotional relationship with money. When I conducted minimalism workshops in New York, I noticed a recurring pattern. Many people who struggled with money did not have a math problem. They had an emotional problem. Some spent compulsively to compensate for emotional voids. Others saved obsessively due to past scarcity traumas. Some gave excessively to buy approval. Others financially sabotaged themselves because they did not feel deserving of abundance. I remember a banker who earned very well, but lived in a chaotic apartment with objects piled up to the ceiling. "If I organize the house and finances," he confessed in a session, "I will have to admit that I have grown, that I am no longer that poor child everyone despised." What we do with our money is rarely just about money. It is about identity, belonging, personal value, fears, dreams, relationships. A client consumed impulsively after each argument with her husband. "It is as if each purchase said, 'I matter,'" she explained, as we organized piles of never-worn shoes. Financial minimalism is not just about numbers, but about self-awareness. It is understanding the stories we tell ourselves about money, about worthiness, about what constitutes a well-lived life. My grandmother Akiko, so careful with each grain of rice, was not just frugal, she was honoring the memories of hunger in the post-war period. But she also knew when to be generous, when spending reflected her true values. Examine your emotional relationship with money. What childhood stories still influence your financial decisions? What limiting beliefs do you need to abandon? What wounds do you need to heal to create a healthy relationship with resources? As in the philosophy of the Japanese art of repairing broken ceramics with gold, your financial scars can become your strongest areas when recognized, treated, and honored with awareness. The path to financial freedom. When I returned from Japan after my years of study, I brought only 2 suitcases and a clarity that no amount of possessions could buy. I detached from everything that did not serve a clear purpose or did not bring authentic beauty to my life. I applied the same principle to my finances. Each dollar now has a purpose, each expense, an intention. Like in the tea ceremony, where each movement is precise and meaningful, without excesses or shortages. This is true financial minimalism, not deprivation, but the abundance that comes from clarity and intention. It is having less to be more. In the beginning, it seems counterintuitive. How can having less result in more? But as I explained to my son Kenji, it is like a Zen garden. By removing the unnecessary, we allow the essential to breathe. By eliminating options, we gain clarity. By reducing noise, we hear our inner voice. My pantry contains only 25 carefully selected items. My wardrobe has 33 pieces. My house has few but meaningful objects. This simplicity gives me something that not all the money in the world can buy: mental peace, clarity, presence, and surprise. This simplicity also results in prosperity. I am not rich in objects, but I am abundant in time, in mental health, in ability to invest, in freedom. I practice the 5 objects ritual that I learned from my grandmother. For each room in the house, I choose only 5 items that combine function and beauty. This discipline taught me that sufficiency is closer than we imagine. I use the 30-day waiting system before any non-essential purchase. I note the desire and wait a month. Most of the time, the impulse passes. When it persists, I know it is something that really matters. Before each purchase, I ask 3 questions that I learned during my tea ceremony studies. Does this serve a real purpose in my life? Does this bring authentic beauty to my space? Does this honor my future as much as my present? In Japan, I learned about the principle of eating until being 80% satisfied. I apply this not only to food, but to all aspects of consumption. Leaving a little space, a little emptiness, is the secret of lasting satisfaction. The luxury of intentionality. Poverty, both financial and mental, is not destiny. It is a circumstance that can be transformed through awareness, intention, and patience. My most precious childhood memories do not involve expensive gifts or luxurious experiences. I remember my grandmother Akiko teaching me to perfectly fold the traditional cloth used to wrap gifts in Japan. I remember the contemplative silence as we watched the snow fall on the garden together. I remember the taste of green tea served in imperfect bowls, but full of history. We were not starving, but we lived with the essentials. And in that essentiality, there was a richness that only now, decades later, I can properly name. The richness of mindfulness, of presence, of appreciation. The financial minimalism that I practice and teach is not about deprivation. It is about focused abundance. It is about consciously choosing where to allow your vital energy, manifested as money, time, attention, to flow freely. In the Japanese tradition, there is a concept called space, the meaningful space between objects. It is the silence between musical notes that creates the melody. It is the emptiness that gives shape to the vase. It is the unfilled space that makes a house breathable, a life navigable. Your financial resources need this space, this breathing space, this intentional interval. Without it, even the greatest fortune becomes a prison. Today, I invite you to observe your relationship with money and possessions with new eyes, to question the habits that may be keeping you in cycles of scarcity, whether material or psychological, to imagine what a life with less volume but greater meaning would be like. If this invitation resonates with you, if you wish to free yourself from the cycles of working and spending without purpose, subscribe to this channel and activate the bell. Each week, I share small rituals and practices that transformed my relationship with money, objects, and time. As my tea ceremony students learn, true sophistication lies in deliberate simplicity, not accidental complexity. Fewer things, more space, more peace. Comment below if any of these financial habits are present in your life. Your comment helps me create content increasingly aligned with your needs. Until our next meeting, with a cup of tea and intentions as clear as the water from the stream where my grandfather found that small stone that I still keep, reminding me that the greatest changes come from the most consistent gestures.